My name is Dennis Mendoza. Actually, my real name is Nemesio Mendoza, but I go by Dennis.
You go by Dennis?
I go by Dennis. Everybody knows me as Dennis. Well, I didn't know I had had heart problems. I had a stroke, and that's when I went into the hospital, and the doctor said, yes, you had a stroke. But did you know that you had had 2 previous heart attacks beforehand, which I was not aware of. My dad had an enlarged heart, but no disease. I lost just for about like a couple of weeks. I had my provisional vision on my left side. I had problems with my vision, my arm. But in a couple of weeks, everything come back to me, and I have no symptoms from that. The only thing that I was affected is as far as my memory loss. I have, as far as being able to make haste decisions, I can't do that. I gotta think of what especially when I'm driving. If I need to turn somewhere, I need to know when I'm gonna turn. I can't, short term, yeah.
Yes.
That and my memory span. I have no attention span. We can be talking, and yeah, you can be talking, but I'm not listening to you. I'm just spaced out. It was probably about 2 years after that I started having symptoms. I was starting to slow down, having shortness of breath, and that's when I went to a heart doctor, and he told me, yes, you do have heart problems. So I was sent to Wichita, Kansas, to a hospital, and they put a defibrillator on me. Excuse me, a pacemaker. And I had that for about a year or so. Later on, the doctor says, this is not good enough for you. He says, you could drop dead. He says, what I'm gonna suggest is put in a defibrillator, which that actually paces your heart and also shocks your heart, should your heart ever stop. I landed up going through 2 pacemakers, 3 defibrillators, before everything was said and done. Yes, I was an Army veteran, Vietnam veteran. While I was in the service, I was in Vietnam for exactly 1 year. That was in '65 and '66. And I was stationed in An Khê, Vietnam, which is with the 1st Cavalry Division, Air Mobile. We're the ones with the helicopters. And that's the first time that they ever went to war using air supports. So that's, and I was with a combat engineer, so we were stationed there, but we were just all over. It's a rough situation, but I don't regret being there. I'm proud to be a veteran. Agent Orange. That's a chemical. That's a chemical that we use. By we, I mean the government used to it's a plant, not a plant, but a shrub that they have that's called elephant grass. And that's what the Viet Cong was using to shelter themselves. They make tunnels under there to attack the American soldiers. So they decided they were going to try and help the American soldiers by dropping Agent Orange, which is a very harmful chemical. And it destroys everything around it. Everything, not just the elephant grass. But they didn't realize what damage it was causing, not only to the American troops, but also to the Vietnamese people. I developed Agent Orange, which is a disease of the heart. It kills the muscles in the heart. It's what it does. And when further testing, when I went through the VA, and they went ahead and gave me the test for Agent Orange, and they finally realized that that's what it was. That test, it was done in about 2007. They had to test every one of them. They had psychiatrists, they had doctors that would examine you to see if you, yeah. But I went through all the testing at a VA hospital, and they determined that that was what my problem was. And at that point in time, they gave me 100% disability. Of course, it took a while. I did not do this through the VA. Okay, I did this on my own. I went through my own doctors, because I had insurance and everything. And I had checked about heart doctors in the VA, and They were going to have to send me all the way to, I think it was Philadelphia. Very few hospitals with the VA do transplants as far as heart. From 2000, when I was first diagnosed with heart problems, I went through open heart surgery to replace one of my valves, my mitral valve. So they replaced it, and several other times I landed in the hospital. They had to, I don't recall the terminology, but when they use the paddles to synchronize your heart, the beating of your heart.
Okay.
So I had that done 3 times. So one time I went to the VA doctor, and I had seen on television of what they call the LVAD, which is a left ventricle assistant device. When I finally went to St. Luke's in Missouri, that's where I had my transplant, I went in there for the LVAD pump. I had no other alternatives. The LVAD pump was going to be my salvation, give me another extra 2-3 years. So they said, well, we're going to have to put you in the hospital for 3 days for all this other testing. It sounds kind of strange saying this, but you have to be healthy to receive an organ, which sounds foolish. That's to help the rejection part, what they're doing. So finally, the last day when I was getting ready to be dismissed, this doctor comes up to my bed, doesn't say a word, just looks me over, and he says, you know, I have to agree with my doctors. He says, you do look healthy, you look young. And I asked him, I says, well, who are you? Because he never introduced himself. He said, well, I'm the head surgeon here for the heart transplant. And I looked at him and I said, okay. He said, I'm too old for a transplant. He said, would you consider one? I said, most definitely. He says, well, that would mean that you'd have to stay here another day for some more serious testing. My wife was there in the room with me, and I says, when do you need my decision? He says, well, I'm going to step out of the room, give you a moment to talk, and I'll be back. I said, okay. So we talked it over. I mean, down deep, I knew what it was going to be. We talked it over for a little bit, and my wife says, I can't tell you what to do. He says, this is your decision. He says, because you know, with that type of surgery, anything can happen. He said, so you're going to have to decide, but I will stand by your decision. So with that being said, the doctor come in, and I told him, let's go for it. He says, okay. He says, so you'll be here another day. Well, as soon as you're dismissed from here, you'll be put on the transplant list. I was on the transplant list for 82 days, which is a quick turnaround, because I've known other patients that were there that have been there for, not especially there, but were on the list for 5 or 6 months, and they still hadn't received one.
We had gone to the doctor a few days earlier, and we were talking about his transplant, and I said to the doctor, I said, you know, our anniversary's coming up. That would be a beautiful gift. But if you can't make it on our anniversary, which would have been the 20th of May, my birthday's the 24th of May. That'll be an awesome birthday gift. Well, the 24th came, we didn't receive a call. 25th came, we didn't receive a call. On the 26th, 8 o'clock at night, I got a call, and it was Pat, who was from St. Luke's, and she said, hi, Donna, is it your birthday? I said, no, my birthday was on Sunday. She goes, oh, well, maybe we'll make this a late gift. We got the heart. Well, St. Luke's is very family, so when someone goes through a transplant, the spouse also goes through. The only difference between it is we don't have the actual surgery, but we feel all that they feel. So my husband was at his friend's, and I called him. I said, honey, hurry, get home. We have a heart, Hurry, I gotta get you in the shower. I gotta get you to the hospital, because you're not supposed to drive yourself. And he walked in the door. I said, hurry, honey, we got a heart. And I'm hysterical. My husband is so calm, because that's the type of man he is. And finally, I was so excitable, and he took his hands and put it on my shoulders and kind of gave me a little shake and said, honey, calm down. He says, because if you have a heart attack, you're not getting my new heart. And so he was very calm, and he did not let me drive to the hospital. And I made all the calls to the family, and we got to the hospital, and he seen the emergency room sign, and he looked at me and with tears in his eyes, and he said, honey, this is the real thing. This is really happening. I'm getting a new heart. I said, I know you are, sweetheart. And it was just so fantastic. Well, then, after his surgery, I would watch all the time to see when the transplant team was coming in, and every time I seen that little case, a little cooler, I would think, oh, that's my husband's heart, that's his heart. And finally the doctor came out, and I said, how's my husband? Is everything okay? Because I can't lose my husband, you know, that's my life. And he said, I'm gonna tell you about your husband. We opened him, and usually when you go and have a heart transplant, they put a temporary pacemaker just in case the heart doesn't regulate. And he said, we put the heart in your husband, and that fast it started beating. That is his heart. And it was just meant to be. And I just looked at him, and I grabbed him and hugged him, and then I, with eyes to the sky, I said, thank you, God, because God, Amanda, and of course Anita, and Arnold, they gave my husband the second chance of life.
We met Amanda. I first heard from Arnold, Amanda's dad. It was the last part of July of the same year that I had my transplant. I had my transplant in May, and I heard from Arnold in the last part of June, July, somewhere in there. And we talked for hours, just getting to know each other and all that. And I'll tell you something funny. When we talked, I said, Arnold, I said, I'm going to ask you something. He says, and I don't mean anything wrong by this. He says, but, you know, I'm Hispanic. How are you going to feel? Or how is the family going to feel when they meet me? And he kind of laughed, and he started laughing. He said, can you speak Spanish? I says, yes, very fluently. He says, you're in the family, bro. He says, because my wife is Spanish. He says, her mother speaks very little English. They're from Texas. He said, so you're going to fit right in. You know, that made me feel good. And being, you know, Hispanic, I've gone through discrimination when I was smaller, and even now. And I wanted to know, maybe prepare myself to what I was going to get into when I went to meet the family. But when he told me that, I felt, oh God, I felt comfortable, real comfortable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, and we met in Houston the same year, in 2015, and they had a big Gift of Life banquet there, and that's when Arnold got to meet all the donors, not the donors, excuse me, the recipients, and Amanda for the first time. And I had talked to her already, and when I seen her, I knew who she was right away, even though I had seen pictures of her, and I just grabbed her and hugged her. She was the one that gave me my new life. Right. She was the one that agreed to the donating her mom's organs. It was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. And I love that little girl so much, like if she was my own. Yeah, because I took my family with me. When we went to Houston, I took my two sisters, my brother-in-law, of course, my wife. So they got to meet the whole family. Yeah, we came down for a week, spent it with Arnold and Amanda, and they were our tour guide. They take us all over, up in the swamp area where he was born and raised, in a small little community there. we toured the plantations and all that. Got to eat the Cajun food, and I love Cajun. Of course, yeah, it's just spicy. I love hot food, being Spanish, you know. We ate alligator and crawfish. Yeah, I've met the 3, yes. I know that there's another one now that received her eyes, but we still don't know much about her. I think it's a female. No, we haven't met, but as far as Joe and Veronica, we met them in Houston.
I don't know how we could ever repay them, but every day we thank God for their family, our love, and most of all, Anita and God.
Without my wife, I never would have made it through this. She was there from day one. In fact, when I met her, I was going to go get a procedure done. I had roughly 2 months to live without my transplant. So to me, that was my second life, my second chance at life. Probably by the end of May, end of May, we're expecting our 4th grandkid. So this one I'm going to be able to pick up as a baby, play with the baby and everything, and enjoy her. So yes, I have been able to do a lot, and with my family, I can do anything I want to now. I was limited, very limited.